nurse from the UK decided to go to Switzerland in order to do doctor-assisted suicide, even though she was extremely healthy. Gill Pharaoh, I think it's Gill Pharaoh is her name, and she admitted that she was completely healthy. She didn't have any problems, but since she worked in a home that had many elderly people in it, she was very concerned about growing old, being dependent on her own children for care, and just didn't want to deal with it. So she decided, you know what, I'm going to do a preemptive strike on old age and ailments and just go to Switzerland and have a doctor-assisted suicide. So here's what she had to say. She wrote about this so people would understand her decision. She said, I have looked after people who are old, on and off, all my life. I have always said I am not getting old. I do not think old age is fun. I know that I have gone just over the hill now. It is not going to start getting better. I do not want people to remember me as a sort of old lady hobbling up the road with a trolley. She also says, I have got so many friends with partners who plainly are a liability. I know you shouldn't say that, but I have this mental picture in my head of all you need to do at my age is break a hip, and you're likely to go very much downhill from that. Okay, so she's very fearful of, or she was very fearful of just being dependent on other people.
Oh, the task is completed?
Yes, she's already ended her life. So this story is kind of difficult to even report on because it's a healthy person who essentially committed suicide, 75 years old. So she lived a long life, a relatively long life. And it's her decision. And ultimately, I believe in individual liberty. And I believe that if you choose to do that, you should be able to do that. Who is the government to tell you what you can and can't do in that case? But it still breaks my heart. And by the way, her family was supportive, even though her daughter had a really hard time coming to grips with it.
Yeah, it's a puzzling story. I mean, I respect that decision of not wanting to grow old, and if that's a real fear of someone's, then I suppose they should have the right to do something about that. It's a little tricky if the state is involved. I don't like the state involvement of it. I guess in Switzerland you can just do it, and the state won't prosecute a doctor for it. I don't know the law. So
well, they have suicide clinics in Switzerland, which I was completely unaware of until this story came about. And I get it, because if you have, first of all, obviously you don't need a terminal illness. In this case, all she had were some issues with her back. She had some back pain. But
Jesus Christ, I'd have been dead at 41. I don't know. It suggests, because that suggests such a strong, powerful psychological fear of getting old, that you'd like to think that there was at least a process by which it's harder to do. Like, you got to talk to doctors, got to talk to therapists. Like, you talk to your kids. Okay, look, Mom, if you break your hip, I'll take you to Switzerland. We'll go to Switzerland then, but you might not break your hip for 6 years. That's 6 years.
I know. I just think about, so I think about my own parents, and if my own parents wanted to do something like this, I just wouldn't let it happen. I just know. And it's crazy because, look, when it comes to your own family, you have your huge bias there. And so all logic is thrown out the window. If I'm like this emotionalist, logical person, then I'll say, yeah, this is totally fine. I mean, it's your life, it's your body. You should be able to do anything that you want to do with yourself and your own body. But at the same time, when I think about my own family, I'm like, no, I would do anything to stop my parents from making a decision like this. When it comes to my own life, I don't know. I mean, one of my biggest fears is growing old, because I don't want to be dependent on someone, and I don't want to live that kind of life. I believe in quality of life as opposed to quantity of years. So I don't know. This is a very difficult story, but ultimately, I will say that I believe it was her decision, and if this is what she wanted, then it's her right to do it.
I'm a little looking forward to being dependent on someone.
You're the worst.
I mean,
you're the worst.
Like, whenever I want it, you gotta go get it, because I can't get it for myself.
What if someone has to wipe you after you use the bathroom? You looking forward to that?
I'm not looking forward to that. No one's looking forward to that. But like, I can't get out of bed. You got to get me a sandwich. Could be worse. Could be worse. I don't know how I feel about this, and I got some grief when we did a similar story because I was really bothered by the decision that that depressed people can. I don't remember where it was. I don't remember any part of the story except that I wasn't sure that that even severe depression was good enough for the state to sign off and approve a suicide at all. and that made me uncomfortable because people can get better, and it suggests that when you're at your worst, and it would allow people at their worst to make this final decision. But I heard from a lot of people who were incredibly depressed and thought that it should be that. I get that.
I think there's an interesting question. Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
I think there's an interesting question about whether or not a depressed person is in the right state of mind to actually consent to something like assisted suicide. That's the argument I would make, right? Because it's different to be dependent on someone because of your physical ailments, and it's a completely different story when someone is not in the right emotional and mental state to make a decision like that. If you're depressed, of course you're more likely to be in favor of suicide, right? You want to exhaust all your other options before you go forward with something like doctor-assisted suicide.
Yeah.
That would be my commentary on that.
Suicide's supposed to be hard, and making it easy for people who want a way out when they don't need it. You know, you know what? I don't know. I don't have a fully formed opinion on this. And what Gill Pharaoh did makes me uncomfortable. And the state involvement in it makes me uncomfortable. A healthy person going to a suicide clinic when at 75, you could have easily 15 pretty healthy years left where you're not dependent on anybody, maybe more. That bothers me, and I'm comfortable saying that it bothers me, and I won't go beyond that.
All right. Well, we want you guys to chime in on this. We put a poll up on the TYT app. Let's put it up and take a look. We asked, a healthy 75-year-old UK nurse has taken her own life at a suicide clinic because she didn't want to get any older. Do you support her decision? 69% of you have said yes so far. 31% of you had said no.
I am not belittling this woman in the story, but I'm not sure we've chosen the right picture on the right side of the screen.
That's a stock image.
It's a stock image.
I don't know.
Like, well, the suicide chamber is right over here. Well, all right, great, let's go. Come on.